Just sign it. The old bat will be dead soon anyway, my nephew hissed. That's what he called me. The old bat. He said it 3 feet from where I was standing, my back turned, my hands still wet from washing the dishes for the party I had paid for. Funny thing about getting old, people think your hearing goes before your heart. They're wrong. You hear everything. You just learn to pretend you don't. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It warms this old heart to know where my words travel. Alright, let me take you back to that night. Because that was the night Helena Caro died. And the woman who took her place? Well, they never saw her coming. It was my 75th birthday. Candles, champagne, gold balloons that said Fab at 75. Like I was some kind of Instagram post instead of a woman with arthritis and a spine full of old stories. The house was full, my house. The one I'd bought with my inheritance when my parents passed. The one I'd opened to my younger sister and her children when they had nowhere else to go. I always said yes. That was my sacred word. Auntie Nell, can we stay a few weeks? Yes, of course. A few weeks became 12 years. Auntie, could you help with the down payment on the salon? Yes, sweetheart. Auntie, I'm a little behind this month. Just until the business picks up. Yes, yes, yes. Helena is what's on my driver's license, but everyone calls me Nell. Easier to shout down hallways, Lila always said. Lila, my baby sister. Smaller than me, sharper than me, prettier than me, and my mother used to say, softer in the head, bless her. I never married again after Martin died. Heart attack, 55. Clutching his chest in the hardware store. Lila moved in with her 2 kids not long after. Just until I get back on my feet, she'd said, mascara streaked, clutching little Cara in one arm and dragging Mason with the other. I had a spare room. I had a pension from 30 years at the library and a small inheritance. I had love. Love feels like an endless well when you're young. No one tells you wells can run dry. The night of my party, the dining room table was groaning. Roast lamb, potatoes, wine from a real vineyard instead of the box I usually bought. I'd hired a pianist from the senior center because Lila said, it'll be classier with live music, Nell. You only turn 75 once. Everyone was there, dressed in their good clothes. Lila in a fitted navy dress. Hair dyed the kind of brown we never had in nature. My niece Cara in one of those jumpsuits that look like pajamas but cost more than my rent used to. My nephew Mason in a blazer he'd bought with the first investment check from me. They'd put up a banner. Happy 75th? Aunt Nell, thank you for everything. I remember smiling at that. I remember thinking maybe they do see me. Isn't that cruel? We sat, we ate, we toasted. Lila got up to give a speech. To Nell, she said, glass raised, voice wobbling in that dramatic way she's always had. The backbone of this family. We couldn't have done any of it without you. Everyone clapped. Some even stood. I dabbed my eyes with my napkin. I'm not made of stone. After cake, when the music got louder and the wine got cheaper, I slipped into the kitchen to clean up. Old habits. I can't sit in a dirty room. The sink was already piled high. Lila's idea of hosting never did include scrubbing pans. That's when I heard it. I just turned on the hot water, the steam fogging my glasses. The kitchen door was cracked open, just a sliver. On the other side, in the hallway by the sideboard, I heard voices, soft, close. The clink of crystal. Just get her to sign it while she's in a good mood, Mason said. My sweet boy. My partner in late-night horror movies. My +1 at every school recital when his dad forgot to come. Are you insane? That was Cara half laughing. You want me to shove paperwork under her nose between cake and dentures? They both laughed. Lila's voice joined in, lower, tighter. She won't understand it anyway. She signs whatever we put in front of her. Just say it so we can help manage things in case. You know, in case she forgets what day it is, Mason said. Or where she lives. Another peal of laughter. Then the sentence that cracked the world. Just sign it. The old bat will be dead soon anyway. Silence. I felt my fingers go numb on the dishcloth. For a moment I thought I'd imagined it, that the years had finally caught up and I was hearing ghosts. But I heard the paper rustle, felt the draft when someone pushed the kitchen door open a little more. She's had a good run, Lila said. And honestly, kids, once the house is in our names, we can finally renovate. Maybe sell. This place is too big for her. We'll find a nice home. Something simple. With what do they call it, Kara? Assisted living, Kara supplied. It's practically a resort. She'll be fine. And we'll be out from under this drafty museum, Mason added. Win-win. They clinked glasses. The pianist in the living room struck up Misty. In the kitchen, my heart broke so quietly not even I could hear it. I turned off the water. Dried my hands. My reflection in the dark kitchen window looked like a stranger, jaw tight, eyes too bright. Nell. Lila's voice floated in. You okay in there? Don't you dare be washing dishes on your big day. I'm fine, I called back, steady as stone. Just catching my breath. And in a way I was. Because that was the moment I stopped breathing for them and started breathing for myself. You might be wondering why I didn't march out there and flip the table, throw their sparkling glasses against the wall, demand to see the papers they were passing around like party favors. I wanted to. Oh, I wanted to. But rage is loud. And what I felt, standing there with suds on my wrinkled knuckles, wasn't rage. It was clarity. Clarity is quiet. It doesn't need witnesses. Just knows. I went back out to that table, sat between Kara and Mason, smiled at their jokes, let them pour me more wine. At one point, Mason slung an arm around my shoulders. Best aunt in the world, he said into my hair. I smelled alcohol and the particular cologne I'd bought him for his first real job interview. The very best, I agreed. When they finally brought me a crisp white envelope with a ribbon around it. Just some papers for your peace of mind, Nell, so we can help handle things if you ever need us to. I took it with a smile. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. Because they had just handed me the key to my own cage. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my 4-poster bed, the same one Martin and I had bought from a second-hand store 45 years ago, staring at the crack in the ceiling where the plaster had split during that big storm in '89. The envelope sat on my nightstand, innocent, expectant. I waited until the house was quiet, until Lila's television went dark and I heard the creak of the stairs as the kids went up to their rooms. I could picture them even with my eyes closed. Kara already scrolling on her phone, Mason kicking off his shoes, loosening his tie, counting my money in his head. I opened the envelope. Durable power of attorney. Transfer of deed. Healthcare proxy. All the pretty strings that turn a person into a puppet. They'd marked each signature line with a yellow flag. Like they were doing me a favor. I am 75, not 5. I read every word. Twice. When the sun finally edged over the horizon, painting the ceiling crack pink, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The woman who woke up that morning was not the woman who'd blown out 75 candles the night before. She was a stranger even to herself. But I liked her already. First things first. I called someone who still remembered my maiden name. Caro, I said into the phone. The old landline Lila had always mocked me for keeping. Helena Caro. I need an appointment. Today if possible. Of course, Miss Caro, the receptionist chirped. Ms. Albright has a cancellation at 10. Albright. Miriam Albright. We'd gone to school together. She'd been the brainy one, always heading somewhere important with a briefcase. I'd married Martin and cataloged books. She'd gone to law school and made a career untangling other people's messes. At 9:15 I walked out of the house with my green coat, my old leather purse and the envelope in my hand. Nell. Lila called from the kitchen. You going somewhere? I thought we'd have a little brunch, just us girls. I've got an errand, I said. I'll pick something up on the way back. She peered around the doorway, hair in pink foam rollers, eyeliner already on. Don't overdo it, she said. You looked tired last night. You should rest, you know? At your age. I smiled. Oh, I plan to, I said. Sooner than you think. Miriam's office smelled like lemon oil and paper. Real books lined the shelves instead of abstract art prints. She rose when I walked in, a little slower than she used to, but with the same sharpness in her eyes. Nell Caro, she said, coming around the desk to hug me. I'd know that posture anywhere. Sit. What's got you calling my office on a Monday morning? I handed her the envelope. She took out the papers, put on her reading glasses and read in silence. Her face didn't change much, but I watched the muscles in her jaw work. When she finished, she looked up at me, glassy eyes magnified. "Did you sign any of this?" she asked. "No," I said. "They gave it to me last night. I take it I shouldn't." The corner of her mouth twitched. "Unless you want to hand over every decision about your life and property to your sister and her children, no. You should not." "Good," I said, leaning back. "That's what I thought. And you called me because?" "Because," I said, folding my hands in my lap, "I'd like to make sure that when I do sign papers, they're the right ones. For me, not for them." Her eyes warmed. "All right then, Helena. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Lila and the kids moving in. About the loans and the help us just this once, Nell. About Mason's startup, some app one never quite understood. And Kara's salon with its marble counters, I definitely did. About the way I'd slowly become the housekeeper, the nanny, the open wallet. I told her about the birthday party. The words "old bat" caught in my throat, but I forced them out. Words are how you make things real at the library and in life. Miriam listened, pen moving over a yellow legal pad. Lines looping like a script for a play I hadn't known I was in. When I finished, there was a long silence. She tapped the pen against the pad. "Helena," she said finally. "Everything in that house, the deed, the accounts, that's all in your name?" "Yes." "And do you have a will?" "An old one," I said. "From when Martin was alive. It leaves everything to him. He's been dust in the ground for 20 years. She nodded slowly. "Then we have work to do." "Work?" Her eyes glittered. "How would you feel about starting again? There are moments in life when you're handed a second chance and you nearly drop it because you don't recognize the shape. I'd always imagined starting over was for 20-somethings with backpacks and Eurail passes. Fresh divorces. People with time. Not old women with varicose veins and pill organizers. "I'm 75, I said. "All the more reason not to spend another year as someone else's doormat," Miriam replied crisply. "We'll revoke any old powers of attorney. We'll draft proper ones with someone you trust, or leave them blank. We'll create a new will, distribute things the way you want. And," she paused, tilting her head, "we'll make sure no one can put you in any nice home you're not choosing yourself." The word nice tasted like poison. "And my sister?" I asked. "The kids?" Miriam folded her hands. "Do you want to keep supporting them?" The answer rolled through me like a wave. I never let myself say it out loud. "No," I said. My voice shook. "I don't." Her smile was small but sharp. "Then we'll make sure you don't." Hook, my dear listener. This was the moment I realized revenge doesn't always look like fire and screaming. Sometimes it looks like ink drying on legal paper in a quiet office. Sometimes it looks like an old woman finally picking up the pen. Of course, paperwork wasn't the only thing Miriam helped me dig up. "Do you have your original birth certificate?" she asked at the end of our meeting. "That was a lifetime ago," I snorted. "I have no idea where it is." "Why?" "Because the county's digitizing old records," she said. "And if we're going to redo everything, it's good to make sure the basics are in order. I'll request a copy. In the meantime, check your attic, your trunks. Old families like ours, we always keep more than we admit." So that afternoon, instead of going home and pretending nothing had changed, I climbed the narrow attic stairs. The air up there smelled like dust and cedar. Sunlight pushed through the small round window, picking out floating specks like tiny ghosts. The trunks were exactly where I'd left them when Lila moved in and declared the attic too creepy to store her things. One was Martin's, army green, dented, still faintly smelling of motor oil. The other was older, wooden, with brass corners dulled by time. My mother's. I'd never opened it after we cleaned out their house. Just brought it with me. Too sentimental to toss away another piece of her. The lock had long since rusted, the latch stiff. I pried it loose with an old screwdriver. Inside, a tangle of lace yellowed like old teeth. A hat with a crushed feather. A stack of letters bound with a blue ribbon. And at the bottom, under a folded christening gown, a flat, cracked leather folder. My name was written on the front in my mother's careful hand. Helena. Private. My heart thudded. I sat back on my heels and opened it. Birth certificates. Vaccination records. A report card from the second grade with a note from Mrs. Chandler. Helena reads above her level but must learn to speak up. If only Mrs. Chandler could see me now. And then, tucked in the back, brittle and half-faded, a different kind of paper. Official, stamped. State of Ohio Certificate of Adoption. I read the name once. Twice. My fingers went cold. Child's name. Female infant later named Rowan. Mother Helena Caro. Date. October 19, 1967. I don't know how long I sat there, the paper trembling in my hands, the attic dust stinging my eyes. I had known, in the way you know about a bad dream you push under the bed, that something was missing in my life. A hollow place I'd filled with other people's children, other people's emergencies. But to see it there in black and white, Rowan. She would be 56 now. Mother was pregnant when she was 19. I whispered to the empty air. They sent her away to Aunt June's farm for a summer. That's what they said. I'd been a child then, more interested in the cicadas and the radio than in the hushed arguments behind closed doors. No, it hadn't been Mother. It had been me. The memory unfolded slowly like old film. Hands on my wrists. Hushed voices. It's for the best, Helena. You're too young. No one needs to know. And me, 19, belly swelling under borrowed dresses, crying into a pillow while the radio played love songs for other people. I pressed the certificate to my chest. Rowan. Somewhere in this state, maybe this town, maybe the next, my daughter was living her life. My blood. My eyes, maybe. My insistent, endless need to make people feel at home. And I had given my life to everyone except her. My knees ached as I stood, but I barely felt it. Love is a well, yes. But it's also a rope. And suddenly I realized mine could reach farther than I thought. The house below me was full of people plotting my quiet disappearance. But somewhere out there was someone I'd been made to disappear from. And I was tired of being a ghost. You see now the threads, don't you? The betrayal at my birthday table. The papers sliding under my nose. The lawyer. The adoption certificate stiff and accusing in my hands. It was all one rope. The question wasn't whether I'd grab it. The question was, where would I climb? I didn't go home that night. Not really. I went back to the house, yes. I walked through the front door like I always had, my key, my lock, my doormat with the worn-out welcome. Lila was at the kitchen table, nail polish spread out like a game, cotton between her toes. Where've you been? She asked, half distracted. We missed you at lunch. Mason made brunch tacos. Shockingly edible. Out, I said, hanging up my coat. Lawyer's office. The brush froze in her hand. Lawyer? What for? Updating things, I said. You know, growing older, it's good to have your ducks in a row. Her face relaxed a fraction. Oh good. I was hoping you'd take that seriously. We worry, you know. I know, I said. I won't be a problem for you. She smiled, not hearing the edge under my words at all. You could never be a problem, Nell. You're family. Family. Such a pretty word draped over so much ugliness. That night, instead of putting the envelope with their documents in my nightstand, I left it on the kitchen counter. In the morning it was gone. And so was I. Leaving a house after 40 years is an odd thing. Took me half an hour. I didn't pack boxes. I didn't haul suitcases. I took my purse, the adoption folder, a week's worth of clothes in an old tote bag, and the green coat. The rest? The furniture, the china, the photo albums, the quilts I'd sewn with aching fingers? Let them have the things. I was taking the story. At dawn, the light slid across the living room, catching dust motes and the glittery fab at 75, balloons now half deflated and sagging. Lila's slippers were by the couch, abandoned. Somewhere upstairs, Kara's alarm chimed a tinkly melody, then went quiet. I stood in the foyer with my bag and my heartbeat. The keys felt heavy in my hand. House, garage, back door. I set them on the little side table with the bowl where people always drop their change. For a moment I imagined leaving a note. Thank you for everything. Instead, I whispered it to myself. Thank you, I said softly, for finally showing me who you are. Then I opened the front door and stepped into the cold morning. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently, the way you close a door on a sleeping child. I walked down the front steps and to the sidewalk. My breath puffed white in the air. Every step felt both too light and impossibly heavy. Halfway to the corner, I heard the front door open behind me. Nell. Mason's voice, rough with sleep. Aunt Nell, where are you going? I kept walking. He called my name again. confusion bleeding into irritation. The car door closed behind me with a soft final click. As I pulled away from the curb, I glanced into the rearview mirror. Mason stood on the porch, barefoot, hair rumpled, his t-shirt askew, looking smaller than he ever had. For a moment my heart clenched. Then I remembered Old Bat and home, and renovate. And I drove on. Now you're probably asking, where did I go? Not a hotel. To Anonymous. Not to some friend's couch. That would have required explaining. No, I went to the only home I had that was truly mine. A place I had almost forgotten existed. The cabin at Willow Lake. Martin and I bought it in '82, when we thought we were going to be the kind of couple that spent weekends fishing and making love on scratchy wool blankets. Then life happened as it does. Martin's heart gave up before our marriage did. After he died, I couldn't bear to go back. But I never sold it. Just in case, I told Miriam years later when she asked. It's only worth sentiment now anyway. The roof leaks. She'd smiled. Sometimes sentiment holds more weight than you think. She'd been right. It was an hour's drive, the town thinning into fields, then woods. The lake appeared like a piece of sky caught in a bowl. When I pulled up, the cabin sagged under the weight of its own neglect. Shingles missing. Porch rail cracked. Cobwebs lace-thick on the windows. I left it on sight. The key stuck in the lock, resistant, then gave under my firm twist. The door groaned, offended at being disturbed. Inside, dust, mouse droppings, and a lingering scent of cedar and old summers. The bed was unmade, just as we'd left it decades ago when Martin got the call about his father's stroke and we rushed back to town. I opened a window. Cold air blew in, sharp and clean. This will do, I said out loud. My voice echoed in the empty room. It'll do just fine. I set my bag down on the table and took out the adoption file. Rowan. One problem at a time, Helena, I told myself. First roots. Second branches. The well was deep, but I was finally hauling the rope. Those first days at the cabin I moved like a ghost with a hammer. I scrubbed the floors, patched the leaks I could, sealed off the bedroom that smelled too much like Martin. I slept on a narrow daybed by the window, wrapped in 3 sweaters and 2 quilts. When the wind blew across the lake, the cabin shuddered like an old animal. At night the silence pressed in. No television murmuring from Lila's room. No bass beat from Kara's endless music. No fridge door opening every 20 minutes as Mason hunted for snacks. Just the creak of the trees. The tick of the cooling stove. And my thoughts. They were louder than any party. I thought about Lila as a girl clinging to my arm at school. Don't leave me, she'd plead on the first day of kindergarten. They'll eat me alive. So I'd stayed close all the way through. I thought about being 19, sent to help Aunt June at the farm for the summer, which was family code for hide our shame. About the baby I'd never even held. They'd taken her the minute she drew breath, saying, "This is what's best, Helena. You'll forget. You're young." I hadn't forgotten. I just buried it under casseroles and carpools and other people's bills. Do you want a hook? Here it is. On the 3rd night my phone buzzed and lit up on the rickety side table. Lila, the screen said. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then Kara. Then Mason. I didn't listen to any of them until the 4th day, when the loneliness nipped at my heels enough to make me curious. Lila first. Nell, where are you? You scared us half to death. You can't just leave. That's not fair. Call me back immediately. Then Kara, voice tight with anger she thought sounded like concern. Aunt Nell, this is dramatic even for you. Mom is freaking out. Mason says you took off with your car and your documents. We need to know you're okay. Call. Please. Then Mason. He didn't sound like a scheming man in his 30s. He sounded like a scared 8-year-old who'd lost his aunt in the grocery store. Aunt Nell, hey. We got a call from some law office? Something about changes? I don't understand what's going on. Just call me. Please. I pressed delete on all of them. Not because I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life I needed to care about myself more. Miriam called the next morning. You safe? She asked without preamble. Yes. Good. They're rattled. I pictured Lila in my kitchen, opening cabinets, cheeks flushed, Kara pacing with her phone, Mason on his laptop typing furiously. How do you know? I asked, though I already had an idea. I sent the notices, she said calmly. Revocation of any assumed authority. New will drafts. Their names are notably absent. What did the will say? I asked. What you told me, she said. Some to charity. Some to that literacy fund you like. The cabin to you explicitly. The house in town. Yes. We'll sell it once you're ready. It's your biggest asset. No reason to let them live there rent-free while you freeze by the lake. I looked around at the rough-hewn beams, the peeling wallpaper, the light dancing on the far wall from the water outside. I'm not freezing, I lied. She laughed softly. You're allowed to be comfortable, Helena. Even now. I hesitated. What about other records? Did you find anything? Your birth certificate should arrive in a few days, she said. But I did pull something else. Papers rustled on her end. There's a note in your file. A sealed adoption record linked to your name. I couldn't access the details yet, but it's there. I know, I whispered. I found my copy. Ah. Her voice softened. And I'm going to find her, I said. Helena, she said gently, these things can be complicated. Emotionally, legally. So is being written out of your own life, I snapped, then winced at my own sharpness. Sorry. I've given everyone everything. I did what they told me when I was 19. I did what they needed when I was 40. I did what they expected when I was 60. I'm done. I could hear her nod through the line. I'll help where I can, she said. But some things you'll have to do yourself. I figured, I said. Finding my daughter was one of those things. And I had no idea where to start. This is where the younger folks in the audience are going to laugh at me. Because when I tell you my first instinct was to go to the library and look up phone books, you'll shake your heads. We didn't have Rowan's adoptive surname, you see. Just the first name I'd given her and the date. Rowan. Named for the rowan trees I could see from Aunt June's bedroom window, their red berries bobbing in the summer wind. From my daybed in the cabin, I stared at the lake and thought, there could be 100 Rowans. There could be none. Then I remembered the little test kits I'd seen on television. Swab your cheek, spit in a tube, find your long-lost cousins who maybe share your great-grandmother's mustache. I ordered one to the cabin. 6 weeks, the website said. Results in 6 weeks. 6 weeks of waiting. 6 weeks of listening to the wind and sweeping out mouse droppings and reheating canned soup and trying not to think about my house in town. A hook for you, it didn't take 6. On the 10th day, my phone pinged with an email. Subject. New DNA match. Possible close family. My hands shook as I clicked. Name Rowan Hart. Relationship estimate. Parent/child. I had to sit down. Her profile picture was just a gray silhouette. She hadn't uploaded a photo. Her little bio said, lover of flowers and old books. Adopted, looking for answers. Be kind. Be kind. My God. At the bottom there was a button message. For a long while I just stared at it. What do you say to the person whose life you missed entirely? Hello, I'm the woman who gave birth to you and then disappeared because I was forced. Hi, I'm the reason your life looks the way it does. For better or worse? In the end, I wrote the only honest thing I could manage. Hello, Rowan. My name is Helena, but everyone calls me Nell. I saw that we might be closely related. I've been looking for you for 56 years. If you'd ever like to talk, I'm here. No pressure. With kindness, Nell. I pressed send, then closed the laptop like it was a dangerous animal. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Inside, my heart rattled my ribs. Would she answer? Would she hate me? Would she ignore me, the way my own family had done for so long in everything but voice? That night, for the first time since I'd left the old house, I cried. Not the dainty kind you see in movies. Ugly, heaving sobs that left my nose raw and my pillow damp. When I finally fell asleep, my phone lay face down on the floor. In the morning there was an answer. Her message was short. Hi Nell. I've been looking for you too. Can we meet? Rowan, my chest felt too small for my lungs. Underneath she typed, I live in Brookside. Is that anywhere near you? Brookside. 20 miles from my town. I'd gone there twice a year for decades to buy special seeds for the community garden. You've walked by her, I whispered. You've stood in the same checkout line. And you never knew. I wrote back, fingers stiff with adrenaline. Brookside isn't far. There's a cafe on Maple and 3rd, near the florist's. Tomorrow at 2? I'll be the old woman in the green coat, shaking like a leaf. She replied seconds later. Tomorrow at 2. I'll be the woman with flowers on her shirt, shaking like a leaf. See you then, Nell. See you then. If I live that long, I thought, and for the first time in years I meant it in a hopeful way. The next day I dressed like I was going to a job interview and a funeral at the same time. Gray skirt, my good blouse, the green coat. I brushed my hair until it shone, pinned it up in the twist Martin used to say made me look like the librarian men write bad poetry about. On the drive into town, every car that passed felt like a sign, every red light a test. The cafe on Maple and 3rd was small, with a bell that chimed when I opened the door. The air smelled like coffee and sugar and something floral. Of course it did. The florist's next door. I was 10 minutes early. I chose a table near the window, hands folded around an empty mug. My heart thumped so hard I was afraid it might set the silverware rattling. At 2:03 the bell rang. She walked in. A woman in her mid-50s, hair shot through with silver, pulled back in a messy bun, freckles across her nose. A soft blue shirt printed with tiny white flowers. She scanned the room, eyes skimming past me then returning. My eyes. She had my eyes. Rowan? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, throat working. Nell. For a moment we just stood there, neither of us moving, the whole cafe fading to a blur around us. Then I did something I hadn't planned at all. I reached out and took her hand. Her fingers curled around mine, firm, warm, shaking. Hi, she said, and then we both laughed, wild and wet. Hi, I echoed. We Saturday, I didn't know if you'd come, she admitted, wrapping her hands around her cup. I didn't know if you'd answer, I replied. She smiled, a small lopsided thing that made my throat ache. I've spent my whole life wondering who I looked like. Turns out the answer is you. For the next 2 hours, time bent. She told me about her life. Adopted at 3 days old by a couple who tried for 10 years to have a baby. A childhood full of secondhand books and Sunday picnics. A father who died when she was 20. A mother who followed slowly, piece by piece, through dementia. I always knew I was adopted, she said. They never lied to me. But they didn't have much information. Closed, they said. Like a door. She ran a flower shop now. Of course she did. Flowers, books. Blood calls to blood in the strangest ways. I'm sorry, I said more times than I can count. I was young. My parents, they didn't give me a choice. They told me it was for the best. I didn't even get to hold you. I expected anger, bitterness, accusations. She shook her head, tears shining. You were 19, she said. They were the adults. I've had good parents. I'm grateful to them. But I always wondered about you. Who you were. If you thought about me. Every day, I said. My voice cracked. Every single day. We cried again. Laughed again. Compared hands, noses, the way we both hated orange marmalade and loved the smell of old paper. I don't want to ruin your life, I said at one point. You have your own story. If you want, maybe I could be a small part of it? A footnote. A footnote, she repeated, then snorted. Lady, you're the prologue. Then she sobered. Let's go slow. Okay. But I'd like to know you. Whatever that ends up looking like. A beginning. Not guaranteed, not perfect. But more than I'd dared to hope. Outside after we hugged goodbye, because of course we hugged. How could we not? I stood on the sidewalk, my hand still tingling from where hers had clasped it. Next door, the window of her flower shop gleamed. Heart in bloom, the sign said in looping script. Buckets of tulips and roses spilled color onto the sidewalk. My daughter. My God. As I turned to go, my phone buzzed in my purse. Mason, the screen read. I considered sending it to voicemail again. Then I thought of Rowan's steady eyes. Of the way she'd said, you have your own story too, you know. I answered. Aunt Nell. Mason's voice was raw. Please don't hang up. What is it, Mason? I asked. They're selling the house, he said. Some lawyer sent papers. Mom's hysterical. Kara says you've lost your mind. Did you really cut us out of your will? I listened to his breath hitch. To the panic he hadn't hidden this time. Yes, I said calmly. I did. Why? he begged. We're your family. You called me an old bat, I said. You plan to put me away and take my home. That's not family, Mason. That's opportunism. Silence. I was drunk, he whispered finally. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said. And more importantly, you laughed when your mother and sister said theirs. You were old enough to know better. He didn't argue. That, more than anything, told me he was finally seeing himself clearly. We're going to lose the house, he said. We have nowhere to go. There are apartments, I said. Motels. The shelters. All the places other people go when they lose things. That's cruel, he snapped. So is calling the woman who paid your tuition and your rent and your first 3 failed business attempts an old bat, I replied, voice steady. I'm not punishing you, Mason. Life is. Actions have consequences. You're meeting yours. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, is this because we're not really your kids? I blinked. What do you mean? Mom said you were never cut out to be a mother, he muttered. That you were always cold. That some people just don't have that switch. I laughed then, a sharp, humorless sound that startled even me. I wasn't cut out to be a doormat, I said. I would have been an excellent mother. My throat tightened. I still might be. He didn't understand that, not yet. How could he? I'm sorry, he said suddenly. The words tumbled out, clumsy. For what I said. For all of it. I don't know how to fix it. You can't, I said softly. But you can do better. With the next woman you lean on. Your sister. Your future children if you have them. You can stop seeing people as furniture that holds you up. His breath hitched. Will I ever see you again? Maybe, I said. When you're not calling because you want something from me. I hung up before he could answer. On the sidewalk, people walked past me. Arms full of flowers and coffee and small everyday sorrows. In the window's reflection I saw myself. Old, yes. Wrinkled, yes. But standing straight. Not a maid. Not a doormat. A woman. The house sold faster than any of us expected. The market was hot, Miriam said. Location, location, location. All those years I'd spent patching roofs and repainting shutters and keeping up the garden while Lila said, Why bother, Nell? It's not like we're going anywhere. It paid off. They were going somewhere, all right. I wasn't there the day the for sale sign sprouted on the lawn like a nasty little mushroom. I wasn't there for the open houses, the strangers traipsing through what used to be my sanctuary, commenting on my wallpaper. But Lila let me know. She called one evening, voice high and brittle. How could you? She demanded. I raised my kids in that house. You raised them on my dime, I corrected. And you were planning to put me in a nice home, as soon as you got your hands on the deed. Forgive me if I don't weep. You're being cruel, she said. You're not yourself. I've never been more myself, I replied. You just don't like who that is. You're going to die alone in that ratty cabin, she spat. With no one to even find your body. Better alone in a cabin I chose, I said mildly, than sedated in a facility you picked so you could knock down the kitchen wall. Her breath came in angry bursts. We're family now. Blood. I thought of Rowan. Of her hand in mine in the cafe. Of her invitation to come see the flower shop, to help with the window displays. Only if you want to, no pressure. Blood, I repeated. Funny you should mention that. She didn't understand the layers. Our conversation ended with her hanging up on me for the first time in our lives. It hurt. Of course it did. But some pain is necessary, like resetting a bone. As the house in town went under contract, my world at the cabin and in Brookside grew richer. Rowan and I started meeting every week. Sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at her shop. Sometimes at the cemetery where her adoptive parents lay under matching stones, where she introduced me softly. This is Nell, she said, fingers tracing the carved letters. She's the woman who brought me into the world. She didn't call me Mom. I didn't expect her to. Labels can wait. Presents can't. I helped her wrap bouquets, learning the language of flowers the way I'd once learned the Dewey Decimal System. Daisies for innocence. Chrysanthemums for loyalty. Yellow roses for friendship. One evening as we closed the shop, she touched my arm. I want you to know something, she said. I'm not replacing them. My parents. They were good to me. I'm not replacing you either with some fantasy mother. I have room. For all of it. If you do. Room. I thought of my big old house, overcrowded with people who only ever wanted more. I thought of my tiny cabin, echoing around my footsteps. I smiled. I have plenty of room, sweetheart. The word slipped out before I could stop it. She didn't flinch. Good, she said. Because I've been thinking. The apartment above the shop is empty. Needs work, but... She shrugged. You'd have your own space. I'd have someone to complain to about difficult brides. No pressure. There it was again. No pressure. When you've spent your life under other people's expectations, that phrase feels like fresh air. I'll think about it, I said, but we both knew I already had. Now I promised you revenge. You've had the emotional kind, the quiet sort that comes from building a new life instead of throwing dishes. But there was one last thing. One last hook in my flesh that needed pulling. The money. I'd always been transparent with Lila and the kids. Maybe that was my mistake. I'd shown them my pension statements, my inheritance papers, my savings. So you know where things stand, I'd said. So you don't worry. All it had done was show them how big the pie was. What I didn't know, what Miriam's forensic accountant later found, was that Mason had taken a slice long before trying to secure the whole thing. Small withdrawals here and there. A loan taken in my name and signed with a shaky scrawl that wasn't quite mine. It's enough to be illegal, Miriam said flatly, sliding the report across her desk. We can press charges. Or use it as leverage. I thought about prison. About my sweet boy. No, my manipulative, frightened, greedy boy. In an orange jumpsuit staring at a concrete wall. No charges, I said. What would that do but harden him? But I won't let it slide. We called a meeting. Neutral ground. Miriam's office. Lila and Mason came. Kara sent a long text full of excuses and emojis I didn't bother decoding. Lila sat rigid in the chair, jaw clenched. Mason looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Miriam laid out the evidence. The forged signatures. The missing funds. Lila went white, then red. You stole from your aunt? She hissed at her son. After everything she's done for you? He stared at the table. I was going to pay it back, he muttered. Once the app took off. Once we refinanced the house. It was just a bridge. A bridge, I repeated. To where? My grave. He flinched. I'm sorry, he said. The words were ragged. I was stupid. Desperate. I thought you'd never notice. That's the problem, I said quietly. You thought I wouldn't notice anything. Not the loans. Not the papers. Not the plans you made for my nice home. Lila squeezed her eyes shut. We never meant to hurt you, Nell. You just didn't care if you did, I replied. Not enough to stop. Miriam cleared her throat. Here are the options, she said briskly, saving us from drowning in guilt. We can involve the police. Or we can agree on restitution. A payment plan. A formal acknowledgement that this was theft, that Helena has chosen mercy. I prefer mercy, I said. For me, not for him. Mercy means I don't drag this through the courts and on the front page of the local paper. Mercy also means I'm free from pretending we're one big happy family. They signed the restitution agreement with shaking hands. Mason didn't look up once. As they stood to leave, Lila turned to me, tears streaking her makeup. Is this it? She asked. 45 years of being sisters and we end in a law office? We end with the truth, I said. We end with me not being your safety net anymore. You wanted my house without me, Lila. Now you get what you wanted. A life without me. That's not what It is, I said. You just didn't expect it to hurt. She reached for me. For a hug, for my hand, I don't know. I stepped back. For the first time in our lives, I watched my little sister stand on her own without leaning on me. It was messy. It was ugly. It was necessary. The day I moved into the apartment above Rowan's shop, the lake at Willow shone in the rearview mirror like a blessing. The cabin had been a chrysalis. This new place, a narrow set of stairs, a cramped kitchen, windows overlooking buckets of peonies and passersby, was my wings. Rowan and I painted the walls together, splattering each other with cream-colored flecks. You sure you're okay with this? I asked for the 5th time, rolling paint onto the last gloomy corner. If I weren't, you'd know, she said dryly. I'm your daughter. We don't hide our feelings well. My heart stumbled then soared. She'd said it. My daughter. We celebrated with takeout pizza on the floor, legs stretched out, backs against the still drying wall. Downstairs, the last customers drifted out of Heart in Bloom. The bell chimed like distant laughter. I'm giving most of the house money away, I told her between bites. To a fund for older women starting over. And to the library. I'm keeping enough for me, obviously. For rent and doctors and flowers. She nodded. I think that's beautiful. And your loan, I added. For expanding the shop? That's not a gift. It's an investment. I expect updates. Spreadsheets. Possibly free tulips. She laughed. Deal. I looked around at the half-finished room. At the life sprouting up around me like shoots through cracked pavement. I spent so long thinking my story was over, I admitted. That I'd just coast downhill into a beige sunset, watching game shows and waiting to be put somewhere out of the way. Rowan nudged me with her socked foot. You're barely halfway through the book, Nell. Outside, a car splashed through a puddle. Somewhere a siren wailed. Here in this cozy paint-smelling room I felt free. Not young. Not unscarred. Just free. Free of their expectations. Free of my own guilt. Free to love who I chose, and to let go of who only ever loved me for what I could give. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. I know this was long. Lives are messy too. I was the woman who gave until she disappeared. Then one night, over a table filled with food I bought, I heard what they really thought of me. And instead of breaking quietly, I woke up. I walked out of the house everyone assumed would be theirs one day, and chose a crooked little cabin and a paint-chipped apartment over a gilded cage. I found the daughter they stole from my arms and the courage they trained out of my spine. I didn't scream. I didn't break plates. I signed papers. I revoked access. I rewrote my will and my story. I chose mercy over prison for the boy who stole from me, but I chose distance over duty too. And in doing that, I found something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. If you're listening to this thinking, I'm too old to leave, I'm too small to fight, I'm too tired to start again. Hear this from an old woman who has slept on more than one lumpy mattress. You are not done. You are allowed to love yourself more than you love their comfort. You are allowed to lock a door behind you and open a better one in front of you. You're allowed to rewrite the ending even in the last chapter. Thank you for listening to mine. Now tell me yours.